I lived with traitors in my own family, but now they're begging for forgiveness for their lies. My name's Jake, I'm 21 years old. And yeah, my life was one hell of a sitcom. Until it wasn't. You know that whole family first bullshit people talk about? Yeah, I used to believe in that. I thought that blood was thicker than water, that these were the people who'd back you up, even if you did something completely stupid like, well, living. Turns out it's more like family first until it gets inconvenient. My mom, Anne, 42 years old, blonde, with a smile so perfect it could sell ice to an Eskimo, was always there with her. Sweetie, everything's going to be fine nonsense. She had this way of making you believe that life was a cakewalk, that you could take a nap and somehow wake up richer. My dad, Alan, 45, kind of a walking stereotype of the I'm cool because I'm intelligent type. Nerdy glasses, the ones that always slide down his nose as if to remind you that he's the smart one. He'd drone on about taxes and retirement plans, as if the most important thing in life wasn't just living. Everything seemed fine. The family dinners, the vacation photos on Facebook, the Sunday mornings where mom would force us to watch family movies. We weren't perfect, but hey, we had that tight-knit vibe. Until it all fell apart. Enter Mike. Mike, my older brother, 25 years old, tall, brown hair, and that grin. Like he knew something you didn't. Always had this cocky swagger. Like he could convince anyone to do anything. And honestly, I thought he was just a charming idiot. Until he decided to get involved in some seriously shady business. Yeah, you know that feeling when someone you trust starts acting off? Like they're playing a game you don't know the rules to? That's when the shit hit the fan. I didn't pay much attention at first. After all, Mike had always been the cool one, getting away with whatever the hell he wanted while I was stuck doing the boring shit. But when he started talking about me stepping down from the family trust fund, yeah, that's when I realized things weren't just a little off. They were totally screwed. It was like a gut punch. He didn't even ask me about it. Just manipulated mom and dad into believing I wasn't responsible enough to handle it. And at first I thought, okay, whatever. Family stuff, it'll blow over. But it didn't. It got worse. And then, it happened. You're a liability, Jake. Dad can't run this place with you hanging around, Mike said one day, as if I was some annoying fly buzzing around. His voice still echoes in my head like a fucking horror movie soundtrack. Just like that, I was the villain in my own damn life. Suddenly, the parents who used to have my back were looking at me like I was the one who'd screwed them over. They didn't even try to hear me out. It was all, Mike's right, Jake. Maybe you just need to figure yourself out. Betrayed. By my own flesh and blood. And it hurt more than I ever thought it could. I stood there, speechless, as they turned their backs on me, and that's when I realized it. I was alone, or so I thought. Mike got his hands on the family business, and from that moment, it was game over. The first thing he did? Accused me of embezzling funds? Yeah, you heard that right. My own brother, the one who used to cover for me when I accidentally broke the TV, now had me painted as the bad guy. The worst part? They believed him. All of them. My own family. The moment Mike threw me under the bus, it was like I had become a ghost in their eyes. You're screwed, Jake, Mike said, flashing that grin of his like he'd just won the lottery. He held the documents in front of me, looking like a smug little shit who had figured out the perfect way to ruin someone's life. I was cornered. The police were all up in my face, my reputation was in the gutter, and I was dead to them. But here's the thing. Deep down, I knew I wasn't guilty. The problem was, no one else did. They all took Mike's word as gospel, and I was the one getting dragged through the mud. I wasn't just fighting for my innocence, I was fighting for my life. And then, there I was, stuck in one of those sterile white police interrogation rooms, feeling like a rat trapped in a cage. The silence was so thick I could almost taste it. My mind was racing, but then, bam, it hit me. What if I turned this around? What if I flipped the script and made Mike the target? So, I went full Sherlock. I started digging. I didn't care if it was legal or not. I needed something, anything, to prove that Mike was full of shit. For weeks, I buried myself in records, emails, anything I could find. And every day, it felt like I was one step closer to something bigger than I could have imagined. My life had turned into a crime scene, and Mike? He was the prime suspect. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. I found everything. Proof of Mike's illegal side hustles, ties to gambling rings, money laundering, shady deals, everything. And it was all buried under a fake paper trail he set up to pin it on me. The guy had planned this for months, maybe even years. It was like finding a treasure chest of dirt, except instead of gold, it was just proof that my own flesh and blood was a manipulative psychopath. But here's the kicker. When I confronted Mike with the evidence, he just laughed, like it was some kind of joke to him. That cold, empty laugh. It sent a chill straight through me. "Good luck proving that, Jake," he sneered. "It's your word against mine." And that's when I realized something. Mike thought he had the upper hand. He thought he was invincible. But he was wrong. He had underestimated me in the worst way possible. I wasn't going down that easy. No way. The truth was getting harder to ignore. And I knew I had to take action. I couldn't just let Mike ruin me. So I started playing the game. I took all the evidence I'd found and carefully laid it out. But this time, I wasn't going to take it to the police. I wasn't going to play by his rules anymore. Instead, I took everything to the family. The Thanksgiving dinner was the perfect storm. There I was, sitting at the dinner table, surrounded by relatives who thought I was the bad guy. My parents, still blind to the truth, sat there like nothing had happened, chatting like it was just another normal day. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not anymore. I slid the manila envelope across the table with a calmness I didn't even know I had. "I think you all need to see this," I said, my voice low but steady. And for a moment, everything was silent. The air was thick with tension. My parents' faces dropped, eyes wide in disbelief, as they flipped through the pages. It wasn't just about the money. It was about how far Mike had gone to destroy me and the entire family for his own gain. The facade he'd put up was crumbling faster than I could have ever imagined. "This is sick." My mom's voice trembled as she looked at Mike. And that was it. The moment when everything flipped. Mike, the golden boy, was now the villain. My parents, once his greatest supporters, stared at him with a mix of shock and disgust. I thought Mike would say something, defend himself. But instead, he just slumped in his chair, his arrogance gone. He knew he was cornered. There was nothing left to say. The fallout was immediate. My family was torn apart. My parents, realizing they'd been duped, went silent for days. Mike tried to twist things, tried to salvage his reputation, but it was too late. The damage was done. And then came the apology. Mike, the man who had accused me, betrayed me, and ruined my life, was kneeling before me, his eyes filled with humiliation. "Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please, forgive me," he begged, his voice broken. The cocky grin from earlier replaced with a desperate plea. It was hard to suppress a laugh, because the irony was so damn thick. This was the same man who'd tried to tear me down, and now he was begging me for forgiveness? It almost felt too easy. I could have crushed him right there, but instead, I stood up, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You've got a long way to go before I forgive you. A long way." My parents apologized too, of course, but it felt hollow. The damage had been done. But in that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. I had taken back control. And Mike? He was just another ghost of my past, kneeling at my feet, trying to crawl back into a life that he'd destroyed.